Hello friends! Today I will be building a diorama for one of the most tragic moments of Pacific War, the explosion of USS Arizona. On 7th December 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, aiming to destroy the US Pacific Fleet and force the Allies to accept Japanese aggression in Asia. The assault caused devastating losses, taking away 2,400 lives, and nearly half are from USS Arizona. Building a diorama is the best way to remember this historical moment. In order to be as accurate as possible, I collected a bunch of reference photos and reading through online documentaries. On the day of attack, USS Arizona was moored at Fort 7 Key near the Ford Island, known as the Battleship Row, with the USS Vestal at her port side but in different direction. To make a base large enough to house both ships, I used my hot wire to cut a piece of XPS foam according to the size of the display box. You should ensure you have sufficient ventilation when doing this step. I then label the footprint of these two ships, because I will build the explosion effect around Arizona's bow. Once it's labeled, I carve out an opening for Arizona with my model saw. For sea waves, I will try out the aluminum foil method. I use crumbled aluminum foil pieces to form concave as a result of the explosion, before gluing them onto the foam with white glue. And then I gently squash another layer of foil to cover the entire water base. I reopen the slot for Arizona and we have done with the water base for now. Although the result is not as real as carving with clay, it still turns out quite appealing, and more importantly, it's much easier to pull off. The next step is to make the smoke effect from the explosion. While some may confuse this photo with Arizona's explosion, it is actually destroyer USS Shaw. The real Arizona explosion will look like this. I built a plastic rod frame to surround Arizona's bow, so that I can attach mini LEDs and a battery box without damaging the model. After adding all the LEDs, we have a messy wiring situation to deal with. So I grouped the wires by their colors and then soldered them to the battery box. I tested the LEDs to make sure all of them were lit, before covering the LEDs with masking tape to diffuse the light and make the color more realistic. Finally, I stretched cotton horizontally to follow the direction of the flame, and then glued the cotton onto the frame using a bit of white glue. The completed smoke effect is a standalone unit which allows me to paint it in isolation before attaching to the diorama. From this photo taken by the Japanese aircraft, both Arizona and Vestals are sheltered. I made the shelters by cutting some 0.1mm plastic sheets. The leftovers from Arizona's wooden deck provides the outline of the stern, and I also added horizontal supports on the top of the shelters. For the mooring key, I used 0.3mm plastic sheet. I didn't manage to find the exact dimension, so I made some measurements using reference photos. With all the elements built, I applied a thin layer of black putty over the water base, followed by gloss blue as the main color. For concave area below the explosion, I brush painted in white. For the smoke, I added some black touch around the edges, since the main body will be lit by LEDs. Finally, after brush painted details on mooring keys, we have completed the painting process. It is time to put the diorama together, but we have another problem to deal with. You see, after putting Arizona into her slot, there is a gap around her waterline. This is because when I was carving the slot earlier, I made it slightly larger so that the model can be easily installed. To solve this issue, I make epoxy putty into long strips and fill out the space between the model and water base. I then use a spatula to blend the edges for a natural transition into the existing waves. After the putty is dry, I brush painted the area in black, followed by gloss blue, making the gap barely visible. Now, I will be putting the remaining diorama together, and I want to briefly share the timeline of Pearl Harbor attack. At 6:10 a.m. of 7th December 1941, 353 aircrafts were launched from 6 carriers located 275 miles north to Pearl Harbor. The attacking waves are formed by high-altitude bombers and torpedo bombers for warships, dive bombers for airfields, and fighters for air superiorities. At 7:55 a.m., although being detected earlier by radar located at Oahu, the first attacking wave arrived at Pearl Harbor uncontested. Commander Mitsuha Fujita transmitted the famous "Tora, Tora, Tora," signifying complete surprise was achieved. With earlier intel that carriers are not at home, the battleship row became the primary target. One after another, they were hit by torpedoes and bombs. At 8:10 a.m., high-altitude bombers dropped 1,760-pound armor-piercing bombs, which are modified from battleship shells. One of them hit Arizona's powder-charged magazine below the second turret. The resultant explosion blew off Arizona's bow and killed 1,177 crews on board instantly. Within minutes, Arizona sank to the floor of Pearl Harbor and stayed there until today. The attack lasted more than 2 hours. At a cost of 29 aircraft, the Japanese sank 3 battleships, damaged 16 other ships, more than 300 aircraft, and killed 2,404 Americans. Without a doubt, it is a tactical victory for the Imperial Japanese. However, they have also found themselves against the most powerful nation on Earth. On 8 December 1941, one day after the attack, the US declared war to Japan. In addition, the third attacking wave, which were cancelled, leaving the naval facilities and oil tanks operational for the US Navy. With all carriers intact and incomparable manufacturing capabilities, the naval battle in the Pacific Ocean between US Navy and the Imperial Japanese Navy is only about to begin. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to see more warship models and their historical diorama, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out my other videos for my USS Arizona and USS Vestal build on the screen. Take care, and I will see you soon.